fruit of the Spirit is singular, but plural in its effect and expressions. It's like a cluster of grapes. One stem, many little shoots, fruit. The fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace. Some of you say, you seem to have joy. You know, I think you see love. But wait a minute, there's another word. Patience. See, some of you have some natural attributes. Some of you are happy-go-lucky. Some of you people think, well, you got peace because you're just laid back. You're not laid back, you're lazy. You're passive. You let the enemy run over you, you look like you don't care. So he sure got a lot of peace. So some of you just got some natural laid-back qualities. Me, I'm kind of wired, and I can look like I'm happy. But I have no patience. Zero. Got it? None. None. You got how much? Zero. Without who? Him. The only place I get patience is what? The fruit of the Spirit. I'll tell you something else, I don't have a lot of self-control. I told you, appetite's controlling. Out of control expressions. Out of control thoughts. Thoughts controlling me. Wrong person pulling those strings. I've got all the problem tendencies. The only way they ever come under control is to deal with them by submitting to Him and allow Him to produce His fruit and bring me under control and release that. Now I'm standing in the Burger King line. Well, you remembering where I was standing, Betty? You got to keep up with me. Robert, you remembered? I was at the Burger King. Did you catch all that? So I don't get to use notes. I can refer to them. I just don't use them much. I just talk about them. I'm in the Burger King line. My 3 kids are here. My line doesn't move. I get to noticing. There's a girl up here, head of my line, hair sticking out everywhere, and that was before it was mod to look like that. She was taking the orders. She was turning them in. She didn't get the money. She waited for them to cook it. Then she came back, gave them the burgers, looked at everything, got the money. I thought, dear God, standing there. Every line is emptied 2 or 3 times. All right, I'm standing there. My kids are standing there watching me. It's like they're waiting for this nuclear explosion. And I'm standing in that line. And this is after this encounter Robert talked about. And I can feel all that flesh rising up. It was amazing. Something's holding it down. And suddenly I'm looking through some other eyes, and God's saying, you looking at that girl? Have you looked at her real close? He said, have you looked at all the other girls? He said, did you look at her hair? He said, look at it. He said, look at the other girls. And I looked at them. They were so neatly cut and placed. And God said, they've all been to the beauty shop. They've had their hair cut, or their mom has carefully cut it. He said, look at her. He said, you want to know how she cuts her hair? She's never been to a beauty shop. Her mother's never cut her hair. She stands in front of the mirror and she tries to cut her hair. She's not working for hobby money. She's working for her life. He said just about all she needs right now is for some big shot preacher to walk up and tell her how dumb she is. He said you could pretty well finish her off. When I got to the counter, our children beheld the glory of God as I loved that girl. And she knew it because Jesus showed up in me. He so wants a place to show up. In that little, God, what a chair. God. They didn't even have a handle on it. You can't get a handle. I started last night to go. Don't worry, Robert, we'll have somebody fix the platform while I set it down. Listen to me. I'm sitting at the restaurant. Now, folks, listen, this gets fun. I got that little journal. And God says, what if dirt could talk? Out of the dust of the ground, he made man. We're his cultivated field. We're supposed to be the garden of God. God said, what if dirt could talk? What would it say? Can anybody get anything good out of me? Could I grow anything? Can I accomplish anything of value? Could anybody see something beautiful in my life? What could come out of me? God said the earth cries out. Bring forth life and beauty and love. Anybody here saying that? Do you know when God set me free, what he told me? Everybody said, boy, you're such a preacher. People have been so nice to talk about the gift God gave me, and I know because I couldn't even give a report in a classroom. For most of the years of school, I never ate in the lunchroom. I took my lunch in a sack, not just because I was poor, I was shy. I couldn't talk. And when God called me, and he really did fill me with his spirit like waves of liquid love, and I've always been reluctant to tell people that because people look for a feeling. I wasn't looking for a feeling. He just said, I want you to preach. I said, God, I don't say I can. He said, well, trust me. Give me your life. And I did, and he filled it up. And a river was released. God, I'm just so grateful. Something good coming out. But I'm telling you, from the moment his life began to flow and his love flowed, and I just love people. And then I began to operate in the gifts and blessed, and I found my way into defeat. And then I was set free. When I sat down in a chair and a carpet cleaner prayed for me, and he leaned over and patted me on the knee after I said, I didn't feel anything, and he said, it's over, son. The party line's clearing up, the traffic's going, son, you're not even gonna believe it. And he just walked out of my room. And I'd had a claw in my brain where I couldn't think, and I'd asked Betty to pray I would die. I was burning with lust. The spiritual strength in my life and the natural sensitivity was attractive to women who saw some kind of comfort and sensitivity they'd never seen in their father, so often in their husbands. And I had been a rejected child, a child that my mother tried to have aborted, a child who never had a father, who was moved and dumped, and all of a sudden, more powerful than sex and lust, which I was already dealing with, I became attractive. I became desirable. And suddenly I'm having conflicts going on until I tell Betty, I said, I'm going to explode. I can't make it. And this guy prayed for me when he told me, you're the most tormented person I've ever seen. And then when I told him I felt nothing, he left and said, son, it's over. And he walked out, and I thought, A couple of days later, I woke up in the morning, and scriptures were coming out of my lips, out of my mouth. I was quoting scriptures I'd never memorized. And I turned to Betty, and I said, Betty, it's gone, it's gone. She said, what? I said, that claw, that stinking claw, it's gone, honey, I can think. I'm telling you, it was amazing. God said, now, I know you're a speaker, but now you're going to be a servant. And God said, you're going to be more effective sitting down than you've ever been standing up. And I thought, well, I got to preach on a stool. I started preaching my crusade sitting on a stool. I thought maybe my delivery was in God's way. It was too dynamic and distracting, so I'd just sit on a stool. That wasn't what he was talking about. He said, I want you to sit before me and listen to my words. I want you to say what I'm saying. I want you to hear what I'm saying. I want you to walk according to my words, and I want you to serve others. And I want you to find everywhere my hand is an undergird. I want you to become a river, a resource, encouraging others wherever they are. And let everyone know they've got a part in my heart. And you're not every part in my heart. You can't do everything in my heart, but I'm going to tell you my heart. And you're going to help bring the parts together as a servant so they can express my heart in total. And we began to move and operate like that all over the world. I remember people scolded me and said, you're not an evangelist anymore. You're sitting on the sofa by your wife. You're running all over the world to mission fields, and you're such a preacher. What are you doing sitting there on the sofa by your wife who won't talk? What are you doing? I said, well, they're listening to me because they're waiting to see if she'll say anything, so I've got their attention. I'm obeying God. And I'm telling you, it's amazing. The incredible thing was when God told me to be a servant, we were having about 200,000 commitments to Christ a year. Within 2 years after I sat down, we started having never less than 2 million commitments to Christ a year. We went up 10 times sitting down and connecting. And the fruitfulness was indescribable. The last few years, Betty said, James, I know something's going on, and I just feel like you're not being carried by the Spirit like you were, and I can tell you're tormented. And I came up and got Tommy Briggs to pray with me. I sat in the car in front of my house with Robert, and I said, Robert, man, it's junk. Still comes at me. I said, I've got unhealthy attractions. It's breaking my heart. I told several others. I told some of my closest leadership. I said, it's just awful. And I said, man, I eat like a pig. I'm hooked on sugar. It talks to me. I can hear it calling from the refrigerator. It talks. And I go. I said, this is stupid. One day Betty said, I just want God to do whatever he wants to do with you, honey. I said, me too, but I don't understand. I said, I think it's just the way it is, just the way it is. And she said, I don't think so. And then I found out I had developed borderline diabetes. At the same time, I had my right hip replaced. And in 3 weeks, I was walking, had the same surgery Tom Watson had, nearly won the British Open at 60. I'm teaching a seminar. And Betty and I went off just to be alone, and we spent the afternoon together, and at 10 o'clock, I went to bed. And at midnight, I woke up, and I was hurting real bad. I said, well, I didn't get that pillow and put it between my knees to keep my hip comfortable. I know I should have gotten the pillow. I better get up and get one because I'm really hurting. And when I got up, I couldn't stand up. I piled up on the floor. I can't even describe to you how helpless it is for a big 6'3" guy. Peeling myself up the wall, dragging myself back into bed, wishing Betty was awake, but trying not to wake her up. And I laid there, my body's on fire. Couldn't move. The whole next day, Betty had to bring a bottle for me to use to go to the bathroom. I couldn't even go to the bathroom. They finally got me out, brought me home, got me in the hospital. Within less than 12 hours, the doctor sitting in front of me said, I have to go in immediately. I got to take the hip apart. I got to take everything out. You're on fire. You got staph infection, maybe the most deadly. A few hours later, when our grandson's sitting there, the infectious disease doctor who lectures all over the world sits and says, we've been discussing it, and you need to understand we're not just fighting for your hip, we're fighting for your life. Please don't miss this. That infectious disease doctor looks over and says, we're fighting for your life. Now, the whole time before I had this surgery for my hip, I prayed about it. God directed me to the right doctor, a man of God. But he never would talk to me about everything. I thought if Tom Watson could win the British Open nearly at age 60, just 9 months later, I could probably maybe win it next year at 66. So I'm going to be strong, and I'm feeling strong. Now I'm laying there, and this guy says, I'm fighting for your life. God never told me anything about my surgery, never told me anything except the doctor.